Thank you so much, Ryan. And we're going to have just a 5-minute break. If any of you would like to speak to some of the staff or even register for ISO, the registration fee is I think it's 34 Rand, right? The reason is that we have discounted for South Africa. ISO is a missions organization, and in many parts of the world, we assess the local economy of every nation, and we try to adjust our prices according to the national economy so that it fits everyone in that group. So for South Africa, we give South Africa a 90% discount, which means you only pay 10% of the value of the course as well as the registration fee. So you can become a student today. We have students of every age. We have students that are 80 and even 90 would be our oldest student, but we also have teenagers that are our students as well. One good thing about ISO, and you'll hear this later on, is you own the course for life. A lot of times if you take online studies, at the end of a semester it drops off. But if you take Hebrew, let's say you wanted to learn Hebrew, we offer Hebrew 101, 201, 301, so you can even learn conversational Hebrew. But if you take Hebrew and 20 years from now you want to do a refresher course, you log in and it's still there waiting on you. So you never lose your outlines. One of the good things about Perry Stone being one of our teachers is he speaks very fast, but you get all of Perry's outlines. He will teach you the whole book of Revelation, and you will have all of his notes in front of you, as well as many, many other teachings as well. So it's very beneficial. The other thing is that the courses are self-paced. They do not time out. We have students who finish a course in a month. We have some who finish one course in 2 years. It doesn't matter. Well, we don't know about that. We're only 19 months old. So, but we have students that are still working on their courses even now. So we're here to serve you, and if you're interested in looking at the 80 courses that we have 30 more courses under development right now that will be released soon, and we're building the repertoire as we go. Let's take a 5-minute break. The ISO booth is right around this corner, and then Pastor has told you where the restrooms are. 5 minutes only, and then we're coming back in to start the next presentation with Dr. Noel. Thank you. And he has gone back and is rebuilding a church and doing a beautiful job there. And he has a large, large city of millions of people that the Lord has called him to. And so he has a tremendous task in front of him. But he is one of our favorite instructors at ISO. He comes by and he's coming back soon to teach the book of Deuteronomy. One of the, most people don't want that job, but he likes that job. One of the divisions of ISO is our expository division, where we're teaching every book in the Bible verse by verse. So you can have an expose of the entire book. So we have several of those already finished. I think we have 6 or 7 of those. I just finished teaching the book of Joel and the book of Malachi recently. So it's not in chronological order, but we do have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers completed, and he's coming back to do Deuteronomy. So let's welcome one of my closest friends in the world, and I introduce him often as the man who saved my life, because when the Lord gave me this friend as a brother, it was a true gift to me. Welcome, Dr. Noel as he comes to speak.
You know, when the Bible speaks about a friend that sticks closer than a brother, that's the way Dr. B is. And I'm grateful that he came into my life and we've had the opportunity to work together. I am from Columbus, Ohio. And surely you would have heard of, because their fame is renowned around the world, the Ohio State University Buckeyes football team. Everyone knows is the best. Their colors are scarlet and gray, so I'm wearing a shirt to represent them today. But it's a great privilege and a great honor. We've enjoyed our time. This is my first trip to South Africa. Dr. B and I have traveled to many countries together in the world, but this is my first trip to South Africa. And I I am so amazed. Let me put it this way. The hospitality of South Africans is unsurpassed anywhere in the world that we have ever been. So thank you for being so warm and so welcoming and allowing us to be with you. I want to stick to my assignment today. And my assignment today is to talk to you about the discipleship system in church. If you remember, Dr. B talked about churches being made up of 8 systems. The discipleship or groups system is the one that I want to address because I feel like this particular church system was one that Jesus made a priority. When it comes to building disciples, Jesus did not make the task of making disciples an option. Now, there are some things that are options. I purchased an automobile recently, and you could buy the basic model of the automobile, or you could buy an automobile with options. But discipleship is not something that Jesus felt was an option. In fact, before Jesus ascended back to heaven, discipleship was on his mind. And it was discipleship that he was focusing on with his followers. In Matthew 28:18 through 20, and Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. I have the authority to tell you what I am about to tell you. Here's what you need to know. Here is your job until I come again. Got it? Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Notice the word he used. Make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Now notice that I underlined 2 things that Jesus said to do in the process of making disciples. And I'm going to mention the first one just briefly, not because that it's not important, but because my assignment is to talk to you about a discipleship system. But I want us to understand today that the first step in making a disciple is baptizing them. I think we make a serious error in Christianity if we neglect water baptism. If water baptism is not a priority, when I read the book of Acts and I see them winning people to Christ, one of the first things they do is make sure they are baptized in water. When Paul went to Ephesus and found a group of believers, one of the first things that he did, they said, we've been baptized unto John's baptism. He baptized them in water in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Water baptism must not be neglected. Here's why. Jesus put it first before saying that we're to teach them, and that's what discipleship is all about, isn't it? Teaching others to observe what Jesus commanded, but he put water baptism first. So here's what I teach my church, that water baptism is our initiation into discipleship. Water baptism does not save us, but it initiates us into discipleship. And then Jesus said, the second thing that you have to do is teach them to observe all things that I have commanded you. Look at the importance of this. It is important that converts become disciples. You and I have the ability to make a convert in a moment's time. We can spend a lifetime building disciples. Discipleship is an ongoing process. Making a convert is a momentary thing. Does that make sense? Discipleship is an ongoing process. It is important that believers, those that have been converted, become followers. I read a book a while back entitled, "I'm a Follower, Not a Fan." A lot of people are fans of Jesus. They think Jesus was a great guy. They think Jesus taught a lot of great things, but they've never become a follower of Jesus. Jesus said, if any man would be my disciple, he must take up his cross daily and do what? Follow him. So they have to become followers. Seekers need to become learners. That's the way a lot of people come to Christ, because they have learned. You know, I tell my church, and they laugh at me. I tell them, I love to come to church and meet new people that smell like sin. Because many people think that church is not the place for people that smell like sin. About 8 or 9 weeks ago, I met a gentleman out in the lobby. We have a little welcome corner where I do a meet and greet after service with all of the first-time guests, and a gentleman walked up to me, and I don't know what he had been drinking that morning before he came to church, but it was not tea and coffee. It was very pungent. He was drinking, and you know what I said under my breath? Thank you, Jesus. He smells like sin. I'm glad you're here. I want my church to always have people in it that may not be living like a Christian, because that tells me they're seekers. They're looking for Jesus. They're trying to figure out whether Christianity is for them. So discipleship is important, because some people will get involved in discipleship because they are seeking for truth. They're seeking to know, is Christianity the way for me and what I need? So here's why discipleship is important. So if discipleship is so important, what is the model that the scriptures give us for discipleship? I always like to go to the scriptures. Great model in Acts 2:42. This is right after Pentecost. Us Pentecostals, we know all about Pentecost. But let's not forget about discipleship. I'll tell you what's happened in the United States. We've had a lot of churches that have focused so much on celebrating in the Sunday morning service that they stopped doing discipleship with adults. They still have some Sunday school, some children's church with the children, but they stopped doing discipleship with adults. Here's the problem with that. They know how to celebrate on Sunday morning, but they're having trouble living like a Christian in between the Sunday morning services. So the Bible gives us a model. As we form discipleship groups, and we're going to talk about those groups this morning, as we form discipleship groups, the Bible tells us what things need to be involved. And they continued steadfastly. I like that word. They continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, in the breaking of bread, and in prayers. Now, this is really how disciples are made. What does the scripture tell us? It tells us that discipleship groups need to be made up, first of all, of a teaching element. A teaching element of some type that involves the scriptures. A learning component, if you please, needs to be a part of that. Discipleship groups need to also include fellowship. There is value just when we get together, when we are with each other. And we call ours life groups because our church is called Life Church at Easton. Easton is the area of our city where our church is located. So it's called Life Church at Easton. And so ours are called life groups. We want the people in our life groups to have a time of just fellowship with each other, talking with each other, visiting, getting to know each other, sharing. And then the third element is sharing. The Bible refers to it as breaking of bread. This is something Pentecostals are great at because everything we do revolves around food. It's wonderful. And some would say it was referring to Holy Communion, and I would not argue with those people, but it's nice to have some snacks. It's nice to have a cup of tea. That's one thing I love about South Africa. I was raised on tea. My mother believed that tea could cure anything. Mom, I have an ingrown toenail. Here's a cup of tea. You'll feel better. Drink this. My mother believed that, and I don't find that everywhere I go in the United States, but here, every day I get several lovely cups of tea, and I love that. But there is a component of sharing our lives together. When we have a meal together, when we break bread together, when we have snacks together, we're sharing our life together. And then prayer. Those early Christians took time to pray with each other and pray for each other. They did not just say, brother, I will pray for you, and walk away and forget about it. They did it. They prayed for each other, and that's an important element in building disciples. All right? If that's the model, Acts 2:42, then we also have a method for employing this. And that method is small groups. Discipleship is most effective when people do life together. Now, understand when I talk about small groups or discipleship groups, what I'm sharing with you is groups that do not necessarily focus on a formal learning environment. We're in a formal learning environment here today. And there's some value in that, but I'm glad to see you taking notes, and I'm glad to see you taking pictures of the screens so that you can go later and you can process that, you can refer to that. That is a good thing. But it's done most effectively, discipleship, in small groups where people can discuss things among themselves, where people can ask questions. Pastors, when we preach on Sunday, there is a certain element of discipleship that takes place because hopefully your sermons are both inspirational and informational, so that there's learning that can take place. But how disconcerting would it be if you're preaching your sermon and people are always raising their hand and saying, Pastor, I have a question. Had that happen to me, by the way, Dr. B. I had that happen to me one Sunday. A man stood up and he said, I have a question. I said, I'll be glad to speak with you after the service. He said, you don't understand. I'm sure everyone else in this congregation has the same question and I need to ask it. So we had a lovely time that Sunday morning. That happened. But it's disconcerting. It throws you off your game if that happens. But see, small groups are when people can do life together. They can ask questions. They can discuss among themselves. They're helping each other and they're learning to live a Christian life. Here's a beautiful thing about small groups. Small groups connect people with each other. And pastors, here's how small groups will help you. People who are connected to each other will be more closely connected to your church. It is important to get people connected to each other, even those that are still seekers, those who have not necessarily accepted Christ yet. It's important to get them connected to believers and to the church quickly. Here's what can happen. Do you remember the parable that Jesus gave of the sower that went out to sow seed? If we don't help people get connected to each other and connected to the church, then the birds of the air, which represented the devil, will come and steal away the seed of the word from their hearts before it has a chance to grow. They need to be connected. Here's what we know about getting people connected to each other. This is almost universally true. If someone comes to your church and they do not make a friend, they do not get connected with someone in your congregation, within 6 months they will go somewhere else to church. You may be the most wonderful, eloquent, amazing preacher. You may have the most beautiful music program. But here's what we have found. People will not stay just because they like the music. People will not stay just because the preaching is exceptional. They stay because they made a friend. Dr. B and I were interviewing a gentleman for a capital fundraising campaign. And he attends one of the largest evangelical churches in America. And he said he had been a part of that church for 20 years, and his pastor is widely considered one of the greatest preachers in our country. And we asked him, why did you stay at that church for 20 years? And he began to smile, and he said, I know the answer you're expecting. My pastor is wonderful. His sermons are amazing. But if that were the only reason I went to that church, I would have been gone a long time ago. He said, my wife and I joined a small group for discipleship. And there's 6 other people in that group. There are 8 of us. And he said, for 20 years, that group of 8 people have been together. And I keep attending that church because of those 6 other people that have become my closest friends. And we do life together. So that's an important thing to do. Now, here's a good thing about small groups. You can call them whatever you wish. You don't have to be locked into a certain identity. Someone suggested that small groups meant home cell groups. Well, some of them are, some of them are not. I lead a small group that meets at a restaurant at 6:30 in the morning on Tuesday mornings with some young men in my church. And we have breakfast, and we talk about life, and we talk about children, and we talk about what it means to be a godly man. It doesn't meet at the church. It meets at a restaurant. You can call them whatever you want to call them. Call them life groups, call them small groups, call them connection groups. Some people call them Sunday school classes, and I know Sunday school has a little different connotation here. Sunday school seems to be just for the children, but in the United States, those that have successful Sunday schools are from the adults all the way down to the small children. Call them whatever you want, but small groups are going to be the key to connecting people to your church and connecting people to each other. All right, what are some of the benefits of small groups? Small groups are a great place for Christians to grow. People will grow and mature in their faith by learning from each other. You know, one of the ways that I have learned is that I have had people in my life that are more mature Christians than myself, that have helped me, mentored me, become an example for me to follow. And that holds true in small groups. Put a seeker, put a new Christian in a group with a mature Christian, and they'll want to be a mature Christian, and they'll want to follow their example. Also, small groups are very relational. Small groups will be built around the relationships of the people in the group. And in a moment, we're going to talk about this, but that's why you have to choose group leaders that are relational people. I love what Dr. B said about, if you want to find an usher for a section, go see who sits in that section and find the person that has the best smile. And they're the most welcoming person. Well, small groups are relational, and small group leaders need to be relational. Our lives are shaped by the relationships that we have. I think the Bible is clear about that. Our life will be shaped by the people that we have around us. And so small groups are important for helping to shape the lives of others. The strong can help the weak. The mature can help the immature. We're all going to be shaped by the relationships we have. Here's a great one, pastors. A great benefit of small groups that can help you as a pastor. Small groups provide care. Now, I have noticed that I didn't realize when we got to Durban what a large city Durban is. They tell me it's some 6 million people. Our driver this morning shared with us that the Pretoria area is multiple millions. I don't remember exactly how many he said, but it's a large area. In my city, I could spend all day just driving from one hospital to the next, just checking on people that may have been hospitalized. But here's what happens when you build small groups and people build relationships in those groups. Now, I may get a phone call from a small group leader that says, my friend John went in the hospital yesterday and he had a procedure done. Pastor, I just wanted to let you know that I prayed with John before he had his procedure, and he came through the procedure very well, and he's going home from the hospital tomorrow. Just wanted you to know that John is going to be fine. Well, see, then as a pastor, I can pick up the phone and I can follow up on John, but I don't always have to be all things to all people and be everywhere at the same time. Now I have others to help me. Here's another suggestion. What about when young women have children? Wouldn't it be nice when they are released from the hospital from having their baby? Wouldn't it be nice to have 3 or 4 days where meals could be brought to their house and help them at their house? A great way to do that is the small group will get together and say, we want to help Mrs. Smith out, and we want to take meals for the next 2 or 3 days so that her husband and the other children are well fed, and she doesn't have to worry about any of those kinds of things. So small groups can provide care. Connection to your church is increased. I have mentioned that, but I want to stress that point. Increased connection to each other will result in stronger connections to your church. And then one of the great ones is that more people are empowered for ministry in small groups. Now think about this. If you don't have small groups now, but let's say that you have a goal by the first of the year to organize 5 small groups. Now you have the task of selecting and training 5 small group leaders. But now you have just released 5 additional people into ministry in your church. Isn't that amazing? You've got 5 more people involved in doing the work of the Lord. And these facilitators don't have to be great teachers. It's not a formal learning environment. All they have to be able to do is facilitate a discussion and provide some fellowship and prayer time and sharing together. So it's a great way to get people involved in ministry. Let me give you a few of the basics of small groups. Here's how we define a small group. A small group is defined as 4 to 12 people who get together at least every other week for the word, for fellowship, for sharing, and prayer. Now, a weekly meeting is preferred, but we have some people in our church that because of their work schedules, they cannot meet every week. But if a group leader cannot meet at least every other week, then we don't let them form a small group. Because the purpose is connection. The purpose is spending time together. So if you're not going to meet regularly, you're defeating the purpose of a small group. Secondly, groups larger than 12 people should be encouraged to divide and form a new group. Now, you have to be diplomatic here, because many people that are used to a traditional model of a class really begin to feel proud of the fact that they started their group with 8 people and now they have 18. Pastor, mine is the largest one in the church, and you're going to divide it now? Oh, Pastor, how can you do that? I've been more successful than ever. Listen, success is not measured in the size of a group when you're doing small groups. It's measured in the connection and the learning of the people that are in the group. So here's how we try to train our small group leaders. We train them, when you are leading a small group, you need to identify someone in your group that can be the next small group leader. So if their group grows, they have started that group with the expectation that the day will come that that group will be divided, but they have been preparing someone, to take their place and step in. Then it can be done diplomatically. It can be done without offense. Does that make sense? I think that's a good way to approach it. We also recommend, and this is for the U.S., and I've been trying to sort of get a handle on how things run here, but in the U.S., we recommend that groups operate on a schedule that follows the school calendar. And here's what I mean by that. People's lives, especially young families, are really built around the school calendar. There are a lot of activities at school. A lot of demands are being made on them by the schools. And you can either fight that or you can work with it. We've decided to work with it, and God has helped us to be pretty successful at doing that. So what that means is our small groups will operate according to the school calendar. So when school starts, it starts for us in August, the beginning of the school year. When does the beginning of your school year start? In January. Okay, for January, we would launch small groups in January. Then when the schools are on holiday, we take a holiday from the life groups. Now, many pastors are afraid they're going to lose momentum. So let me share a little key with you here. We set up our groups to run for 8 to 12 weeks according to how long it is until the next school holiday. We set them up to run 8 to 12 weeks. And I had the same concern because I grew up in the Church of God, and we had a system where everyone came on Wednesday night, and we had classes. They called it Family Training Hour. And we had classes, and those just went on and on and on and on, no matter what time of the year it was. Well, the problem with that is that people were taking vacations, people were going on holiday, and oftentimes it was very difficult to get workers. So what I would recommend is set up your small groups to work on an 8 to 12 week schedule that will go along with the school calendar. When they're on holiday, you be on holiday. And then relaunch another set of small groups when the holiday is over. Let me tell you what will happen. First of all, you'll get more people that are willing to be a small group leader. You see, I met someone just recently who said, about 10 years ago, my pastor said, I need a substitute teacher for the boys' Sunday school class, ages 10 to 12. He said, that was 10 years ago, and I'm still the substitute teacher. Only I'm not substituting for anyone. I'm there every Sunday. And so when we're asking people to make a commitment that's going to feel like an ongoing commitment, with no end to it, they hesitate to do that. I just met with someone in my church recently that I asked to take a leadership position, and he said, Pastor, I'm willing to do this, but I'm going to give you a 1-year commitment. I will be faithful to that for 1 year. And I respect that. So it's easier to get group leaders when they know they can commit for 8 to 12 weeks, and then if they cannot continue or do not wish to continue, there's no hard feelings. You can move forward with a different group leader. Also, what if you, despite your training and despite your prayer over the situation, you get a group leader in place who's not very effective? How do you remove them? But see, in this system, they know that they're only serving for 8 to 12 weeks. And then all the leader has to say is, well, you know what? We're not going to continue this group. I have another place for you to serve that I'd like for you to serve. So these folks are going to be going into other groups. So it's recommended that you operate according to the school calendar. Those who lead the group should be facilitators and not lecturers. Again, that's what we're doing here today, but that's not most effective in small groups. The facilitators that you choose should be loyal, growing Christians who are relational. Find people that know how to smile, that know how to shake hands and hug people's necks. And they should be excited about seeing others grow and be willing to be trained. Now, these people need to be loyal to your church. They need to be carefully chosen. Also, a small group may meet at the church, a home, or any other location approved by the pastor or small groups director. That was another difference from American Sunday School, which required that we meet an hour before service. Everyone went to class, and there had to be enough classrooms in the church for everyone to have a classroom to go to. With a small groups model, it doesn't have to meet in a church. Also, each meeting should last about 1.5 hours, especially if they're meeting in someone's home. Please be respectful of people's homes and people's time. And realize you're going to get together again next week. We don't have to stay for 2 or 3 hours and wear out our welcome. You may form groups either geographically or based upon letting people choose which group they want to be in. There are some churches that have successful small group models by dividing their city into zones. And if you are in this certain zone, then you attend the small group that's in that area. But most churches allow people to choose how they best feel would be a good fit for them. Small groups may be unified groups. A unified group is a group that works according to a theme that's chosen by the leader, by the church leaders, I should say, by the church leaders. There are some churches that use a model that they create outlines of the pastor's sermons. All the small group leaders have those outlines, and they use those outlines as a basis for discussion in their small groups. But there are other groups that are free market groups. Free market groups are groups that the leader, the group leader, and whoever is the pastor or leader over small groups get together and decide what are they going to talk about? What is the direction that this group is going to go? And there are many churches that use that model very, very successfully. We use this model very often in our church. And here's something that we're getting started in our church. Other groups may be called interest groups. Interest groups. Listen, there is still value to Christians getting together around things they are interested in doing. We have some guys that like to go to the gun range, and they like to shoot their guns They feel better when they go blow something up. You know, that's good for them. But that group will have the word. They will have prayer. They will have sharing. They will have all of the elements that are involved in a small group. We have another one that's just starting, that's a scrapbooking group. And but they will have those elements. Now, in closing, I want to share this with you very quick. Pastor, you are the key person. Not that you have to be in charge of all the small groups. But if you do not believe in small groups, no one else in your church will believe in it. If you and I just delegate to someone else and say, go ahead and try small groups. We'll see how it works. But I don't believe in it as the pastor. People are going to follow my lead rather than the lead of the small groups pastor. They really are, because God put me there as the leader. So here's what that means. That means that I have to preach and teach about the necessity and value of small groups. I find ways to work it into my sermons as the Lord leads and the Lord directs. I find ways to talk about how important it is as members of the body of Christ to be connected to each other. Here's something else that's very important. Pastor, you need to either lead or be a part of a small group. And the people of my church will testify to this. Sometimes I lead a small group, but there are other times that I'm not leading a small group. I will go join a group that's being led by someone else, because I am a pastor, but I'm still a disciple. I'm still growing, and I want to continue to grow. Plus, it helps me to if I can find a small group that has some new believers in it, see, I can make some personal connections with those new believers. I have to be willing as a pastor to trust people and empower them once I have trained them. The key is train them in the principles that you're learning. Know that they are loyal to your church, and then empower them. Let them know what your expectations are. They can't meet my expectations if my expectations are not clear. And then I have to release them as disciples to go make other disciples. You know, there's a concept in the marketplace today that has just, exploded over the years. It's called multi-level marketing. Have you ever heard of that? Multi-level marketing. In the United States, they sometimes call it pyramid schemes. I don't know all about that stuff. I'm not in the business world as much as I would like to be. But let me say this. The first multi-level marketing plan that works was created by Jesus. He said for you and I to go make disciples. And then it's the job of those disciples to go make other disciples who will go make other disciples. And how many of you can see that small groups would help us to do that? Wouldn't it? It would. Thank you so much for your time and attention. God bless you.
Okay, we're going to take a few moments here for some Q&A. We're going to do a quick presentation, and then we're going to take a nice break with a snack, and then we're going to come back after that with a couple of more presentations. I'm very excited about the next presentation that I get to give you. I call it Bows and Arrows. I only have one arrow, so I will only shoot the first person who walks out on my session. After that, you're free to go. That's an American joke. I probably shouldn't have said it. I'm not going to shoot anyone, I promise. No, it's going to be a fun session. So what we're going to do is we're going to take just a few moments here and do some Q&A on the two topics that we've covered. We've talked about church systems, the 8 church systems that most churches operate by. Now we've taken a closer look at the groups system, which is the discipleship. Sometimes we call that discipleship system. Sometimes we call it groups system, because the group system does disciple. So it's interchangeable. So if you have any questions for Dr. Chuck or myself, we'll go ahead and take those right now. We can answer any questions that you have or comments that you might want to add to some of the things that we have already said. All right? So we'll just open up the floor for discussion. You can just raise your hand. We will recognize you if you have any questions. That's okay if you don't, because we can ask you some questions. So let me ask you some questions while you're thinking of your question. How many of you have small groups operating in your churches? All right, very good. So how many of you how many of you have been nervous about starting small groups in your churches? Okay, some churches are that way. I actually did not see the value in it when we started small groups because our calendar was already so full. And I thought, how can we add one more thing? But what we realized is once we started small groups, we stopped doing a lot of other things that small groups organically made up for. And it was one of the best things that we ever did. Like Dr. Chuck, I joined a small group, then I saw the value in the friendship of that, and then I started leading small groups. So when I teach the small group model, I use the letter S to describe 5 types of small groups. The first one is sermon-based groups, which Pastor Chuck mentioned, where you give out an outline of the pastor's sermons, and the small groups discuss the sermon when they meet together over coffee or tea. So they discuss the sermon. I love that model. And I think most pastors would love it if the people would pay attention more, make notes, because they knew they were going to have a discussion about it later. So we know some very large churches. I know a church that runs 10,000 people, and the only model they offer is the sermon-based group. There's another small group model that starts with an S, sports groups. And this is groups of people that get together and play athletic sports together, soccer or anything like that. But what they do is they have a Bible study incorporated in that. Many times they'll use a text feed on WhatsApp or their text messaging program, and they will converse all week long and give prayer requests. They're doing life together. So the sports model is a great way. It brings a lot of people into the church that don't go to church when you create small groups with that model. So you can do a variety of them. The other one, as he mentioned, is free markets. I call that social groups. And that's basically anything. You can do a cooking class in a free market class. You can swap recipes. He has one in his church that is scrapbooking. So coming together and making scrapbooks, as long as you have food and you have prayer and you have Bible study at some point in time. And I'm getting a lot of head shaking on the food part there. So then it qualifies for a small group. So you have sermon-based groups, you have sports groups, you have the social groups, which would be the free market groups, and then also service groups. A lot of groups like to come together and do a service to the community. Some volunteer at the medical clinic or the hospital. Some of them go along the streets and pick up paper. Some of them go clean up the playground at the local primary school. They would go there, and some of them even paint the playground, the equipment. So they do community service groups, and they get together. Some of the service groups will service the homes of older church members that will go and paint for them or repair the plumbing or the electricity or something in their home just to be a service to the community. So service groups are a great way to do that. And then finally, the fifth one that starts with an S would be spiritual groups. And that would be Bible study or perhaps a book study. Pastor, when he introduced me, mentioned some of the books that I've written. Many of the books I've written, I wrote for small group curriculum. So you can read a chapter, and there's questions and answers at the end of each chapter. And then so you can do a book study together. So it's another great way to do small groups. I love small groups now. I push it everywhere I go. First of all, because it is the biblical model of Acts chapter 2. They grew 3,000 people in one day. What do you do with that? You start small groups. Then they grew 5,000 more people by the end of the week. So what do you do with 8,000 brand new Christians? You have to learn doctrine. You have to disciple them. So home groups for them was the best way to do it. I still think that original model is the best model for discipleship that you can have. So I really want you to take that into consideration. I love this. Great job.
I just wanted to mention as well, because we talk about people that are able to facilitate. Oftentimes, there's some great stuff out there. If you have scripture-based or Bible-based groups, there's some great stuff out there that you can have some of the best people in the world that are doing a 20-minute Bible study via a DVD, and then the group can discuss, and that way the church leader or the pastor has the opportunity to review the curriculum and know exactly what they're going to be talking about. That's a great way. And also, before the day is out, we're going to be telling you how ISO courses can be used for small groups as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a whole program just for that. By the way, speaking of DVDs, Pastor Lowe has alerted me that the church is filming all of this so that they can make DVDs available to you for the teachings today. Can we say thank you to Pastor Lowe for this? That's wonderful, a wonderful gift. And they're only 500 Rand each. That was a joke. I have to learn how to joke in South Africa. No, there's no cost. There you go. Thank you. One person. So I'm going to have to just stop joking around in South Africa because our American humor is a little different, I guess. So I want to introduce you to a member of my staff. This is Matt. His last name is Hur, like Ben-Hur. And Matt is actually the editor at ISO. So everything that you see that comes from our curriculum, he is our young, brilliant editor. Matt is one of the smartest young men I know. As a matter of fact, he is only 25 years old, married to a beautiful redheaded girl. I'm married to a redhead too, so he and I have that in common. And so Matt, whenever I hired him, I learned from his resume that in his college entrance exam, which I don't know if you do that here, but we have to do that. They want to know how much knowledge you have before you go to a college. So you have to qualify to go to certain colleges. And so there is a standard college entrance exam that's given to all the students. Matt is the only person I have ever met in his field of study that he scored a perfect score on a college entrance exam. I don't know any other person that's ever done that. So he is a brilliant young man, and we are so thrilled to have him on the ISO staff as our young editor.
Thank you, Dr. B. Good morning, folks. How's everybody doing? So you're going to have to bear with me. I've got a little bit of a sore throat. But today we're going to talk to you about ISO again. And over the next few days, we're going to be talking about some of ISO's benefits and programs and how to use the site. But I just want to start by showing you guys some of what we have to offer, some samples of what we actually have content-wise. So to start, all of our courses are in these divisions. We have Bible languages and Hebraic roots, Bible prophecy, personal and ministry development, books of the Bible, theology, and topical Bible study. So all of our courses will fit in one of those divisions. So when you visit our homepage, this is what you'll see. And I've got highlighted there, I don't know if you can see that from where you're sitting, but all of those Bible divisions, all those ISO divisions are there at the bottom of the screen. And when you click on one of those, you'll be taken to a list of all of the courses in that division. So you can click around and see what you're interested in, and each course will have a page like this. And you probably also can't read that from where you're sitting, but there's a list of lesson titles, and there's a written description of the course, as well as a video describing the course. All courses range from 27 Rand to 205 Rand. So again, as Dr. B has said, our goal is to be accessible worldwide. So going back to our course catalog, I'm going to show you a sample clip from one of our courses just to let you see what they look like. So many of you are probably familiar with Perry Stone. I know he has a TV program here. So I'm going to show you a clip from his course, The Tabernacle.
From the moment that man is expelled from the tree of life and expelled from the Garden of Eden, God no longer really came down to communicate with man like he did before. As a matter of fact, if you read the Bible, what God did is God would send an angelic messenger, sometimes in the form of a person, sometimes in the form of an angel. God then would appear to Abraham in a dream. He would appear to Jacob in a vision or a dream. So God began this process of saying, I will speak to you, but I'm going to speak to you concealed. I'm going to speak to you through dreams. I'm going to speak to you through visions. Occasionally, I'll send an angel to you. And this is the method God used to speak to man from the time of Adam's fall, ladies and gentlemen, for 2,448 years. For from the time of Adam to the time of Moses is approximately, and this it can be off by a few years, scholars say, but 2,448 years. Finally, God decided, he says this, I want to build a dwelling place. I want to build a place where I can come down and have access back to man. And so this is the purpose of the tabernacle of Moses.
So that was just to give you folks a sample. So most of our courses will follow a very similar format, with they're filmed in front of a live audience, just like that. So going back to another course, this was actually the most recent course at the time that I compiled this presentation, and we've since released another course called Divine Healing. So we try to release courses every month, close to it, and so we try to introduce them with sales and a variety of other things. But this is Marriage and Family, also taught by Dr. B here, and I'm just going to show you a little bit more of a different side of this course. So I'm going to start with the video that's on the course page that gives you a sample of the course.
Welcome to the International School of the Word course on marriage and family. In this course, you will learn about God's design for healthy marriage and family relationships. Relationships thrive when they are given biblical boundaries, following the model God created. Dr. Bryan Cutshall gives his insight into relationships gained from years of study, professional counseling, pastoring, and personal experience. Join us for practical, well-articulated, and scriptural advice for couples and family members. This course covers a variety of topics, including raising children, routines in marriage, the cord of 3 strands, toxic emotions in relationships, and blood covenants. There are 14 eye-opening lessons in this course. Bring your Bible, your heart and mind, and let's grow wiser together.
So that's just to give you a sample. So each course has a video like that you can watch to determine if you're interested in it before you purchase the course. Now again, I don't think you can read this from where you are, but each course is also accompanied by an outline. Usually they're 5 to 25 pages per lesson, each lesson being about half an hour long. And so as you can tell, we have the instructor's information organized so that you don't have to take notes. You can if you choose, but we have all of their resources, all of their graphs, anything else that they use. This is a great way for you to have printable information. You can print or download it, however works best for you. And this is a lot of my job. This is what I do. So if you see mistakes there, I'm the one you complain to. So again, kind of small font up there, but each lesson is accompanied by a quiz. So all of our courses have multiple choice quizzes. They're fairly straightforward. They're not to, make you learn to the test, but they're more to just for yourself to make sure that you've learned the information. And if you were able to read that just now, you could probably even answer a few of these. For instance, which nation in the world has the lowest divorce rate? And that's actually India. So this is just another set of examples of courses that I think present a wide array of our teachings. So we have Building Healthy Church Systems is very similar to the material you've been hearing about today. That's taught by Dr. Cutshall, as well as several other ministry professionals, on everything from church security to marriage and ministry, and a variety of topics, breaking growth barriers. We have Biblical Worship 101, also taught by a variety of ministry professionals, practice professionals for many years. And that covers everything from the philosophy to the theology to, again, the practice of worship in church. We have Canonization of Scripture is taught by renowned, world-renowned archaeologist Dr. Michael Knight, on the history and, again, the theology of how we ended up with the Bible that we now have. It's a fascinating course. We have an expository study of angels, which is a comprehensive look at every verse in the Bible that mentions angels or angelic beings. It really gives sort of a comprehensive look at everything we know. And then Understanding Islam is taught by one of our professors who is a former Muslim, and is a very fascinating deep dive into his life and his testimony, as well as sort of giving you language to speak to Muslims in a way that they can understand. And I don't know the demographics in South Africa, but in the US this has been very helpful. So again, Crystal, Ryan, and myself will be at the booth out here in this lobby all day today, and we would love to answer any questions and help you guys with anything you need. So thank you very much for your time.